Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bitcoin Not Crypto. You can find me on Twitter at Forrest Hodel. And in today's episode, we have a guest from WorkSave Bitcoin. His name's Josh. And I'm just going to throw it over to you with the simple question here. What got you interested in Bitcoin to begin with?
It's kind of a long journey. Kind of started with my mom kind of teaching me about just like money in general, teaching me about just like the stock market and kind of how to invest my money and get my first credit card. And then so that was like 2019, and then in 2020 when COVID happened and everything, I kind of saw it as a good buying opportunity. Like all the stocks fell, so I saw it kind of logically like, oh, like airline stocks all crash, but like they'll come back. So stuff like that, like cruise lines, just like buying some basic stocks like that. And yeah, I think I definitely wish I had just kept like buying and dollar cost averaging into stuff, because eventually I discovered options, which was kind of a slippery slope for me. It didn't go too well. But yeah, if I had just kind of bought some stuff and held it for a while, I probably would have been better off. But yeah, that kind of happened in 2020. And then 2021, one of my friends kind of just explained Bitcoin to me, my friend Eric. And yeah, it's kind of all from there. I definitely went through the altcoin phase. I can proudly say I'm altcoin free today, but definitely wasted a little too much time in the altcoins. But I was always mainly Bitcoin, thankfully, and my friend kind of taught me a good amount about that and gave me a solid foundation for having the conviction in Bitcoin, and eventually rotated all out of all those altcoins. But I definitely would have had a lot more Bitcoin if I had just started buying Bitcoin when I first heard about it and just stuck to that. So that's kind of what my channel is, just teaching people the basics and Bitcoin only, kind of to avoid the same mistakes I went through first learning about investing and stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty common. I mean, I did the same. I just, before I knew anything about it, okay, well, Bitcoin's the biggest, so I'll buy the most of that. Ethereum's second biggest, I'll buy some of that. I'll buy some whatever, and then you start to learn about it. So I'm curious, like, when your friend was telling you about Bitcoin, what was it about what he was telling you, or about your beginning of understanding about Bitcoin that was interesting to you? Was it like the idea that it could go up way more, or was it like some sort of fundamental ideas about what Bitcoin is?
I think it was more the fundamentals, kind of like explaining what a blockchain is, like just this immutable thing, and kind of like basically how like transactions work and how it's completely peer to peer. Yeah, I don't know if we talked much about like price speculation. I think it was more of a fundamental understanding, which was good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's awesome. And then what made you move from those altcoins into Bitcoin? Like, did you begin to find a deeper understanding about what those were, or what Bitcoin was? What kind of led you to more Bitcoin only? If you're interested in getting yourself some Bitcoin, I would recommend taking a look at Bitcoin Well. There's a link in the description, and if you use my referral code, you'll actually get some free Bitcoin. They're the best place, in my opinion, to buy Bitcoin because they're a non-custodial exchange, which means they never hold your Bitcoin for you. When you send them money, they'll send you Bitcoin directly to your wallet, and you can buy on-chain or Lightning through them. And they have a swap function at a 0% fee, so you can swap in between the two. They also have non-KYC options, and they're available in Canada and the United States. So check them out. Link in the description. That goes to support this show. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the lack of success from altcoins. I was, I don't know, messing around on like Binance Smart Chain, like stuff over there. And yeah, just the more I learned about it, I think it's just like a gradual process. Um, I think up until like even like 6 months ago, I still had like a little bit of Ethereum and like Cardano. And since then, I think just the more I learn about it, the more my conviction is in Bitcoin only.
So, what are some of the problems, if you had to explain them? What are some of the problems with those altcoins, or what are some of the why would somebody get more conviction of Bitcoin, do you think?
Bitcoin like having no CEO, and it's it's free for everyone to project their own vision onto it and their own like dreams for what they think it should be and what impact it can have on the world instead of a CEO or some kind of leader or board dictating that when that can go wrong. I think Satoshi, like giving that gift to the world, I think is like kind of like a spiritual experience once you really like think about that and conceptualize how he took no personal gain or glory from it and just gave it as a gift to the world.
Do you think it was like I mean, that's such a interesting question that always comes up when I begin to talk about Bitcoin to people. They learn about Satoshi a little bit and they say, "Oh, he has like a million coins and like, why are those just left there? Why didn't he cash out?" Like, do you think it was like a selfless thing? I mean, I've kind of personally come to the conclusion that it's almost like those coins being left there are like an indication of how secure Bitcoin really is because it's like the giant honeypot. If Bitcoin could be cracked, people could have access to all of those coins because they really don't have any owner anymore, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it was definitely like a selfless act, or at least I like to believe that. And I think that's just one of the most important aspects of it and why the altcoins will come and go.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, we can see right now there's like in the news with Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum. It's like he posted a tweet about how he's the in control of Ethereum basically, and if he's going to step down, he's going to pick who ends up controlling it. And it's just like, okay, I guess like with the new crypto friendly administration in America, you're totally fine now with just admitting that this is a completely centralized project. That's what it seems like, at least.
Yeah, and like XRP and stuff, just the owners like I don't know, funding yacht parties with the token that they created. It kind of just feels disingenuine and yeah, it's a little sketchy over there.
Oh, I'd say so. I'd say so for sure. So, what made you want to create educational content around Bitcoin? I know for myself, like it was like for one, like, you just run out of people that are interested in hearing about about Bitcoin in your life around you, so you kinda wanna reach out more, but it's also kinda like a network thing, so, yeah, I'd be curious to know why you, 'cause that's what I like, drew me to wanting to have this conversation with you, is that you create these really digestible, short videos on one subject around Bitcoin, so I'm curious of why you wanted to do that and, yeah, why you share those videos.
Definitely have had a mixed bag of like trying to orange pill people. Thankfully, I was able to orange pill my mom a little bit, kind of repay the favor there for teaching me about different things. But yeah, I think just the aspect of not wanting institutions to be able to gobble all of it up and have it be able to benefit as many people as possible and be as distributed as possible because I do really think it's going to be just like a great wealth transfer and I want as many people to be a part of that as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think that we're in this cycle of Bitcoin's adoption phase where big players are starting to get interested. Like, I think the market cap of Bitcoin has just been too small. Like to them, it's been like almost like buying like a penny stock, right? In their eyes. And now it's like, okay, now it's mature enough. Now some of the risk has come off and we can see where this goes. I think Bitcoin itself is like a bit of a Trojan horse though. They don't really realize like what they're adopting, like that in my opinion it undermines like the monetary system that they've benefited from being so close to. Um but yeah, anyway, I did want to ask you a little bit about like your thoughts on and how you began to understand or the idea of monetary debasement. Like, was that part of your learning about Bitcoin as well? Was like understanding the flaw in fiat or in money that we use today?
Yeah, I've definitely always kind of been like questioning things like I'm 22. I dropped out of college just and I'd say like besides Bitcoin, I think that's like the second best decision I made for myself. Like Just I did a coding boot camp now, um, and just work as a software developer, and just saved myself so much time and energy by doing that, and just seeing so many flaws with that system, and just seeing how like things really should be getting cheaper and easier for us. Like we humans are becoming more and more efficient at automating things. Like things really should be getting cheaper, and it's just kind of unfair. And like you go to school and just kind of learn one industry just kind of well enough to work in that industry, and not really expanding much outside of that. Like I always wish the school system would be more like exploratory, but like I feel like in this fiat system people don't really have the time and the space to be able to really like explore what actually interests them, and kind of go down different paths. And um yeah, so I think one of the most transformative aspects of Bitcoin is giving people that space to be able to like offer what their gift is to the world, whether it's like their art or their music or their whatever craft that they I feel like everyone has some innate gift or skill that they can give to the world, but in the fiat system you don't really have the space to be able to give that. So I think that's one of the my favorite aspects of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I agree completely. And for me, it really clicked when when I began to understand that humans are just naturally deflationary. Like we develop technology, we just rapidly make things more and more efficient, and it's like if we're deflationary, if the world's inflation or sorry deflationary, and why are we subject to inflationary money? And when you start to ask those questions, you say, okay, who benefits from the inflationary money? You see central banks, you see bankers, people printing money, people benefiting from a debt-based society, and you start to think, well, they're really just extracting value for nothing. They're able to print up this money for nothing. They're extracting the difference between the deflation we should have and the inflation that they create. So it seems really unfair. And I think you're right. I think if we had, if we lived in a naturally deflationary world and our money also represented that, also had those values, that it would be, it would, it would actually allow us to have a lot more like uh excess, right? Like we would have an excess of ability. And then in those states, like you can look back in history where, you know, country or nations or cities or countries or whatever that were very successful, that had an abundance of things, they also have the most historical like art and technology and development and individual thought and creation. And I think a lot of that like is being sucked out by the central bank. Like I don't know, it's just a crazy concept, but like we could be living a lot better if we didn't have this fiat system. I really do think that. Yeah, it's brutal. You mentioned you're 22. So you're Gen Z, is that right? Yeah, Gen Z. Do you think that like Bitcoin has like a, I think, generational stuff is pretty important to like think about. And do you think that Bitcoin will affect your generation in ways that might be different than other generations? This video is brought to you by Stampseed, which offers a titanium seed plate and stamping kit, which in my opinion are the best tools possible to secure your Bitcoin for generations. Their titanium plate is fire resistant and it is rust resistant and it is made out of titanium. It's going to last. And their stamping kit is great. I don't know if you've ever tried to use any other ones, but they bounce around. They don't do a deep indentation. Their stamping kit really works very well. Don't use paper to store your seed phrase. Don't cheap out on some DIY situation. Store this for the long term. Your Bitcoin is going to be worth a lot more in the future. Just do it properly with Stampseed and get 15% off using my code BTC, not crypto. 15.
I hope so. I think that's part of my mission and what I want to be able to like teach people. I definitely see a mixed bag where people my age like either really love Bitcoin or like really like fear it or really hate it because of what they've heard about it. So I think I don't know. I feel like I could see it going either way, and I think that's why I feel called to try to educate people about it because there's so much misinformation and like fear around it. The headlines, like seeing that it's volatile or it's bad for the environment or stuff like that, I think those kind of just stick with people. And when they hear the word Bitcoin, they either think of those problems or I think they just think of like meme coins or like NFTs and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely like a mixed bag of people's perception of it.
Yeah, I've thought about that as well. There's a lot of that is misconception, right? Bitcoin is actually not bad for the environment. It can be actually quite beneficial, especially into the future. You know, we've seen the rapid adoption of renewable energy for Bitcoin mining because it's cheap and it's just the incentive. It naturally aligns there, and then if they buy that renewable energy, that incentivizes renewable energy producers to expand their energy production. So it increases the net amount of renewables. So it just yeah, it's kind of like a lot of that stuff is like just straight up lies or just misinformed or like outdated information. And that's kind of a thought I had where a lot of people get like a conception of what Bitcoin is, but they got that conception in like 2016 or 2017, and it just kind of like sticks with them. And Bitcoin in the space and in the world has been like evolving and changing since then. And it's time like people need to like readapt what they think about Bitcoin. Like they need to be open. In my opinion, I think it takes an open mind to really understand Bitcoin. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think with the environmental, like the best way I try to explain it or understand it is like that it incentivizes the use of energy that normally just goes to waste that creates pollution. Like we now have a productive means to capture that energy and use it, and then it's like a cycle of using clean energy and kind of incentivizing the utilization of that wasted energy.
Yeah, definitely. The stranded energy, the like the flare gas, natural gas, flare gas is like a perfect example of that. And I think there's just going to be more discovery of places that where it makes sense to just set up a Bitcoin miner on site. So we mentioned that fear that people have when they're kind of first exposed to Bitcoin, or they might have a perception of that. What what do you think are some of like the important things that somebody that is just starting to understand Bitcoin or just like just wanting to get into it, some beginner stuff? What do you think are some of the important things that somebody should start to look into? Because you know, Bitcoin has so many different subjects around it, and you don't even like if you haven't stepped into that space, you don't even know the questions to ask, right? You don't even know what you don't know. So, what are some of the things that people should start looking at?
I think like where I usually start is like trying to explain that like people see it as like a way to make money. Like like to see like the Lambos and the crypto bros or whatever, and I try to just say it's not a way, it's not a means of making money. It is money, and it's a new technology, a monetary protocol that is created to solve a problem. It's not a way for me to make more money.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a good place to start. And I think that's probably why your channel is called Work Save Bitcoin, right? It's like um yeah, I like to say that with Bitcoin, I take profits when I swap my fiat into Bitcoin. That's me taking profits. Do you think that there's a you know like yeah, I just had a friend reach out to me, you know, a high school friend I haven't talked to in years, ask me about Bitcoin. Um, he asked me a question like of trading. Do you try to sell it? Do you try to buy it back? Do you think that like it, what do you think about that kind of idea about trading Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not doing that, but yeah, I think people just see it as a glorified stock, basically. I think they don't really have any distinction of their mind between Bitcoin and any other stock. It's just a thing that has a value, but they haven't really gone into any of the technical aspects of it.
Right. So you think maybe it's yeah, I mean I would assume as well it's just kind of a a sign of like under education maybe about what they're actually holding, because I don't know, I've in the past, I mean for me I never plan on selling my bitcoin. I plan on using my bitcoin, and that means maybe buying something with it in the future if I need to, or lending against it maybe if that becomes actually doable in a secure way. um but yeah, I never plan on selling it. And I look back at old trades that I did when I first got interested in Bitcoin, and I regret every single one of them. For sure. Yeah. So beyond that first thing, do you think that people should like learn self custody? They should learn about history of money. Like, what are like? There's just so many directions you can go with understanding Bitcoin. I yeah, I just wonder like what people should learn. I guess.
Yeah, I think history of money is probably a good place to start. I think self custody could be a little overwhelming for people, and especially nerve wracking. Like when you send that transaction, like hoping it's going to come through. Like that's a fear you kind of have to go through and kind of know what you're doing to be able to overcome that. But yeah, I think like understanding the history of money is a good place to start, and like how why gold was a good money at the time, and like how the um like past civilizations, like they would debase their money by putting less and less gold in their coins, and that's basically what we're seeing today. Like it's the same kind of monetary debasement. And yeah, I think just like learning about what makes a good money and what makes a bad money is probably a good place to start.
It's all about building conviction in what you hold with Bitcoin, in my opinion, because one, like, yeah, I never tell people to buy Bitcoin. And like the people around me, like I want to tell the people around me to buy Bitcoin because I care about them and I think it's good for them to own it. But I oftentimes will just explain certain aspects of it that I think will be interesting to them or like prudent to who they are as individuals. And then I'll say like, hey, you should look at these kind of resources. And then I've had yeah, multiple people be like, okay, can you show me actually how to buy this now? Like I really want to buy this now, instead of being the other way where you're just like, hey, you should buy this, you should buy this, and they're like, I don't know, I don't know. Instead, it's really like the more you learn, the more you want it, in my opinion. That's what I've seen happen, at least.
For sure. And it took a lot of learning just to get to 100% Bitcoin conviction, so it definitely takes time. And yeah, there's no better time to start.
Yeah, no, I agree. What would you say is your favorite thing about Bitcoin?
Yeah, I'd just say the potential for change that it has. I think kind of like I was saying earlier, just like having a deflationary currency and like what people are able to focus on. Like there's so many like talented people that don't have the time to cultivate their talents because they have to worry about working their job and getting more dollars to pay for stuff while they're constantly having their purchasing power stolen. And yeah, I just think there's so many talented people out there that don't have the freedom to explore those talents. And I think that's one of my favorite aspects of it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I've watched a bunch of stuff on your channel, and I maybe I've missed it, but have you thought about MicroStrategy? Do you have any thoughts about what MicroStrategy is doing with acquiring Bitcoin, kind of wrapping it in financial instruments, giving people access to the volatility and the price appreciation of Bitcoin? I mean, they're not actually ever gifted that Bitcoin that is underlying of MicroStrategy. But yeah, what are your thoughts on like corporate adoption of Bitcoin and MicroStrategy?
I wouldn't say I'm super well versed in like the technical aspects of like the traditional finance markets. I think I just understand Bitcoin well enough to understand that the company that has by far the most Bitcoin, and it's not even close, like is going to do pretty well. And like just listening to Michael Saylor talk is crazy. Like his depth of knowledge on like any topic imaginable is like pretty crazy. And so I think the company with the most of the best capital the world's ever seen is going to do pretty well. And they'll be able to pivot, and like with all that capital they'll be able to hire the most talented people for whatever they choose to do, whatever path they choose to go down. So yeah, I definitely have a little bit of MicroStrategy, maybe like I'm not a super high percentage, maybe like 3 or 4%. But yeah, I definitely see the value in it.
Nice. Yeah, that's a lot more than a lot of people understand about MicroStrategy. It's a very misunderstood equity in this position, which is why it's so volatile, right? It wouldn't have the volatility if everybody understood really what it's worth, in my opinion.
Yeah, I try to listen to like some of the MicroStrategy like podcasts and stuff, but a lot of it definitely goes over my head in terms of like I understand they're going into debt to buy Bitcoin and offering these bonds and stuff, but other than that, my technical analysis of it's a little lacking.
Yeah, and I think that's oftentimes what it is, right? Is it's like you have to have to understand MicroStrategy, you have to have an understanding about Bitcoin, but then also about financial markets and instruments and all of these different things. And is there's very few people that really have an understanding of both of those two very complex ideas. Yeah, so yeah, for me, it's yeah, I love MicroStrategy. It's a very interesting subject for me. But yeah, what do you think about like? I mean, I think right, like literally before this call, there was like an announcement of some sort of executive order, strategic digital asset stockpile kind of thing. What do you think about what's going on in the states with potential for a strategic Bitcoin reserve type?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a mixed bag. Like it's kind of like ups and downs. Like the meme coin wasn't great, and then freeing Ross was great, and um, yeah, I don't know if this strategic reserve will be a mix of different assets. I hope it's all Bitcoin or mostly Bitcoin, but yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, I definitely think Trump winning is better for crypto than the alternative. I don't think that's even a question, but it's definitely a bit of a mixed bag for us for sure.
Totally is. Yeah, you mentioned the meme coin there. I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about your thoughts about why. I mean, you mentioned it wasn't good. What are your thoughts on the like Trump and Melania both launching a meme coin right before inauguration? The timing was crazy.
Yeah, I just feel like it's an added like they're gonna have to like maintain it well enough to not like have it crash and have that like shatter their trust a little bit. And yeah, I just wish had he and his team had just focused on Bitcoin adoption. And I just think it's just like an added kind of attention sucker. And yeah, like they're gonna have to make sure it doesn't crash to zero anytime soon.
Yeah, they'll want to, in my opinion, they'll want to squeeze dollars out of people for as long as they can. That's that's the idea of that thing, right? It's I think you're right though. It is a distraction from Bitcoin, and a lot of undereducated people will conflate the two, say like, "Oh, he's created his own Bitcoin." You know, it's like no, it's just a meme coin. It doesn't have any. Also, I mean, it has like no semblance of actual value. It's like I don't know, trading cards, I guess. But although people do value those later on anyway, but
I do think like the Bitcoin industry as a whole, like in the last year or two, has done a good job like separating itself from the kind of meme coin NFT space, like all that. So I think we're definitely moving in a somewhat good direction there, and just seeing a lot more like Bitcoin only creators, I think is great. Like you and Jor and Guapamoto and like Bitcoin University and stuff like that. I think those are definitely good. And I think when I was first getting into this space, like I would just all these influencers like pumping these like small cap altcoins because they're like, this is how you're gonna make money, but it's clear you're pumping your own bags. So I think it's good that the Bitcoin space has kind of separated itself from that a good amount, so I think that's a positive too.
I agree completely. Yeah. I mean, when I got into this space, I was watching like altcoin daily on YouTube, and then he has occasional like fine information in there. It's whatever. I mean, it's totally all a lot of it is altcoin stuff. But then, he'll like say, talk about some small cap AI thing and then be like, all like, I just want to be transparent. I do own this and was an early investor. And it's like, oh, wow, okay. So you're clear about this. I mean, how many people are not clear about this? And what about all the other things that you weren't like an early investor in that you need to declare that, but you still have a giant bag of it and you have 1 million plus subscribers and you're pumping it because you want to get out of that position and maybe into something else. It just seems like, yeah, the incentives there for these altcoin channels are just completely to pump their own bags on these small cap things where they actually have the ability to do so. I mean, me releasing a video, Jor releasing a video, even Bitcoin University, who has a great audience, they're not affecting the price of Bitcoin. None of us are affecting the price of Bitcoin. Not realistically. I mean, hopefully. And I know from like, people telling me that I've inspired them to buy some Bitcoin themselves. A friend of mine just said, "Oh, I set up a dollar cost average, $25 a week of Bitcoin because of some stuff you shared." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And to me, that's kind of the other side of like the governments getting involved in buying Bitcoin is like it's going to up the price. It's going to make it harder for you and I and the rest of the plebs around the world to buy Bitcoin, or we'll get less of it for our fiat. And it's like Bitcoin, in my opinion, has the most like positive, influential like effect on the people that are the most disenfranchised, not the people like the government.
Yeah, and I think that's how like, Bitcoin creators, at least for the most part, are their intentions are in the right place. Like, we don't have a big enough audience to move a $2 trillion asset, so
I wanted to ask you, like, for me, Bitcoin actually changed the way that I kind of like view the world and had almost like, I think people can conflate like Bitcoin and spirituality or like religion and this kind of stuff because it does have like an effect on, or it has on me, of like who I am in the world. Has it affected you in any way like that where it's actually like changed part of who you are, do you think?
yeah, definitely. I think it's just like is hope for a lot of people, and I think that's one of the biggest aspects of it. Like, I definitely have always been like, I've always like went against the grain a little bit, like, and like hated like the quote unquote system. And when I was younger, I was kind of just angry about it. I didn't really maybe have like a good outlet or a good solution to propose, but now I kind of feel like I have like that hope and that thing that I know isn't going to solve all the world's problems, but it's going to solve a good amount of them and will free up people to focus on other problems as well.
Yeah, no, that's super well put. Yeah, it's really easy to be nihilistic in this world where there's a lot of problems. And then yeah, you start to understand Bitcoin, you start to think, okay, well, a lot of these problems are caused by broken money. And here's the solution. And for me, it's like it will fix the world if the world adopts it, but I don't expect that because that's out of my control. But it can fix part of my world as an individual by adopting it. That's kind of how I see it.
I do think we're, doing our best to make sure that happens, and it's cool to be a part of that history in whatever way we're able to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it is cool. We are a part of Bitcoin's history, which is the most intact, immutable history that's ever existed. Yeah. What do you think is the biggest barrier to wider Bitcoin adoption right now?
I mean, I definitely think like the misinformation around it so long, like just coordinated attacks by the media. I think that forms a lot of people's opinions about it. And I think just kind of like victim mentality in general, like some people aren't seeking out those solutions maybe as much. And yeah, I just think the perception of it is so mixed because of how the media has painted it for so long.
What do you think the future of Bitcoin is? What is your hope for Bitcoin in the future?
And I think one aspect is bringing more trust to institutions. Like I don't think the world will be completely decentralized, but I do think having having Bitcoin as a trusted financial um, asset, I think we'll be able to develop more trust in institutions. I think a lot of Bitcoiners are just like very distrustful of a lot of institutions, like from like the medical system to the school system to banking and all this stuff. But I think, having fair, honest money, I think we'll be able to kind of have trust in those institutions again. And they'll be more democratized and more, yeah,
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. They'll be forced basically to run better. They don't have like, I mean, banks is a clear example, right? They wouldn't have necessarily the backstop. Like, say if there's no fiat money anymore, like money can't just be spun up to bail out banks. They actually have to be good actors in the space.
yeah. They definitely didn't learn their lesson from the financial crisis of oh wait, I just watched The Big Short a couple weeks ago and learned about all that stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, pretty wild for sure. All right, Josh. Well, I think we'll wrap up here. Did you have any? Oh yeah. Where can people find you? I'll put your links in the description, but where can people find you as well?
Yeah, just work save Bitcoin on YouTube. My handle is stacking sats 24/7 on X as well. Yeah, those are the main two places right now.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for being on the podcast, Josh.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.